Yeah. Welcome to another edition of Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. As you guys can see, I'm joined by a very illustrious guest, a very special guest, the one, the only, Gate City Sports, also formerly known as Steven Hyder, but they call him Steve. Let's call my man Steve, man. Gates, how you feeling, my man?
Doing good. I'm doing good, man. You know my saying is, bro. People call me Stat Sheet Steve. People just call me Steve. I don't care what you call me, man. Just don't call me late for dinner.
I know. Listen, man. I know the vibes. My wife called me downstairs not too long ago for dinner, and I was about a minute too late, and she's had to scream upstairs one too many times. And you already know how that goes, man. This content creation thing keeps us locked in the dungeon. So, what we're gonna do is, man,
it can definitely keep you busy, man. No doubt about it.
Definitely. There's so much I want to pick your brain about because, so much has happened. Since the last time we spoke. I think the last time we spoke was during the off season before the season started. And, we were still pretty much up in the air about what this Philadelphia Eagles team will look like, how good they would be, how the coaching staff will elevate from year one to year two, where Jalen Hurts will go from year two to year three. But, his first year starting to his second year starting. And, let's kind of start, from the top and then we'll work our way down into the weeds. So, overall, what's been your evaluation of this 14-3 season, just as you've gone through it game by game, week by week, what's been some of the things that you noticed, what stood out to you? Just give me your overall synopsis, your overall analysis of the Philadelphia Eagles over the past 18 weeks.
Roller coaster ride, man. It's been a roller coaster ride. I mean, we had a heck of a start to the year, man. I mean, when you go through and you just look at how long it took us to finally catch the first loss, and
Right.
just, we kept hearing everyone's like, "Oh, we're not convinced. We're not convinced. We're not convinced."
I think we lost Gates there for a second. Got a little bit of an internet hiccup. But yeah, this Philadelphia Eagles team, they've shocked everybody. No one saw this coming, right? 14-3 is something I didn't see coming. I had the team going 12-5. But yeah, Gates, I'm not sure if you can hear me right now, but I think internet cut out a little bit there. But yeah, I'm gonna hold it down till my man Gates comes back. But yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles, they've exceeded all expectations. And we've talked about it all throughout the season. We've talked about it earlier today, how even Jalen Hurts has exceeded many of our expectations. And that's what makes it so fascinating, because we all had our own thought, our own perception of how good Jalen Hurts could be. But again, he's taking it to another level. So let's get my man Gates back into the system. Yeah.
All right, man. I was like, let me try to put this on airplane mode and take it off, man.
No, you're all good. You're all good. I held it down for us. So, but yeah, you said it's been a roller coaster ride, right? Why that?
I just think the narrative, man, the narrative around the team, the way the team started. I mean, you go back, you look at, we were undefeated all the way up to that Washington game. And even as strong as the team came out the gates, and the fact that, we were just one challenge after another.
I think I lost Gates again. But yeah, roller coaster ride, because everybody had their own thoughts on how the season would go, the expectations. And there we go, Gates. We good?
I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're good. Yeah.
No, just that, we started off, come out the gates, undefeated team. We heard even as good as we started off the season, we heard the rumblings that people thought we weren't as good as being reported, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's been up and down. We've had, a share of good run of luck when it comes to injuries, and then down the stretch we started taking the injuries, and it's like, man, we thought we had a legitimate backup quarterback. I don't know that I feel that way right now, Tone. To be real with you, for me, it's just been a roller coaster up and down. But I will say this: when we're on our A game and we're healthy, in my opinion, we are clearly the best team in the football in league. Straightforward.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. And they proved it. Now, people can debate all day the quality of the opponent, teams they've beaten, did they have a winning record at the time? But in my opinion, at the end of the day, they were dominating people. It wasn't just that they were winning games. And sure, you had those occasional games where the game's a little tighter, the team may start off a little slower, but for the most part, they've dominated their opponents. And, this coaching staff, surprised me, but I think we all can agree that Jalen Hurts took a leap that we didn't see this coming. I mean, I personally knew he would improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we all could agree that we knew Jalen Hurts would improve, but I don't think any of us expected him to have this type of jump, make this kind of leap this soon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that we were going to be there. I made plenty of videos stating that I thought Jalen Hurts was better than most people understood. With that said, man, I mean, being in the MVP conversation this year, I didn't quite go that far. Like, I didn't think we were going to see that kind of jump from Jalen Hurts, but I did expect Jalen to demonstrate that he can throw the deep ball better than people think. I thought that he would be able to get this offense into a rhythm. I talked about that all offseason about, hey, man, like people are misunderstanding what's going on with Jalen Hurts. Yes, there are times where he's failing to read things correctly from last season, but I think the bigger issue was with the timing of the offense. It was, Andy Reid said it best. The quarterback is responsible for the rhythm and the timing of an offense. And that was the larger issue with Jalen Hurts. And, it goes out, he works with several quarterback coaches, works with several private quarterback coaches, but the main draw, the big one, it was with 3D QB. So working with, Tom House and, Adam Dado and those guys down there in South California. So, I mean, you see, he put the time, he put the effort in it, and the young man came away as being probably I'll argue he's the most dynamic quarterback in the league right now.
Interesting.
I know people want to say Lamar Jackson. Maybe Lamar is more dynamic running the football. I think Jalen Hurts is what everyone envisions this type of quarterback being able to break you down off the run, being able to break you down off also reading and throwing the football too. And I think we got some guys out there, man. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. We got some dudes that are kind of falling into this category now. I think this is the new advancement of the NFL. I don't think this is the last we're going to see of this style of quarterback. I think it's going to only keep accelerating, to be quite honest.
So you think this is a trend that's, that began arguably with, I guess, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, those guys that, like you said, that can break you down on the run, but also can break you down with the pass, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of guys that, to a certain extent, fall into this category. I think Russell Wilson falls into the category, right? Yeah. Over time, he became more and more a pocket passer, but part of what Russ can do is Russ can buy time. That's what kind of made him great, even as he started evolving his game a little bit. And it was even at NC State. I mean, he could run the football on you. I mean, I knew that about him as a freshman at NC State. But what really made him special wasn't that he wasn't looking to run and break the pocket that way. He was really hanging out for the last second to get the ball downfield, and he's elusive. He was really hard to bring down in the backfield in college, and we saw that continue into the pros. So I definitely think that we've seen a maturation of this. And you can even go back to before Russ, there was Colin Kaepernick. So, I mean, I think this has been coming on. I think a lot of people have misunderstood it. We've had people inside this community. When I say this community, I mean Philadelphia, people putting out content, I think make some pretty foolish comments. Like, I hate to say it, Tone, but I know you heard it. Brothers can't win a Super Bowl. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I think the narrative is I think what they say is the dual threat or the running quarterback can't win the Super Bowl, or
I didn't understand.
I don't buy into that.
I didn't understand the phrasing. You're right. I don't buy into that either in terms of the long-term projection. I think that's someone not paying attention to the trend of the NFL.
Exactly.
But I think that Russell Wilson and I think Pat Mahomes would have an issue with this young man saying that they are not persons of color. I think that they would have issue with that.
Right.
Like, I don't know Pat, but I have met Russ. I went to college with Russ.
Right.
I think Russ would have a problem with that, man. I really do. I don't think Russ would be okay with that line of thought. And I didn't understand what that young man was trying to say. It sounded off the cuff to me, man. I'm not going to lie here, bro. I was just kind of like, yo, if I was on the show with this dude, I'd be making my exit.
I try to. It's so funny you say that. Like, I try to stay away from guys who have the most bizarre takes, right? Like, like takes that aren't even football anymore. Now it's becoming something else, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love talking to you about the game, because, you're so cerebral about it, right? And you talk about the game from, regardless of your fandom, you talk about the game from an unbiased perspective, right? You always say for your smart what's your quote that you always say when you start your channel for your cerebral football fans? Is that what you say?
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Yeah. So we talk about Jalen Hurts' game, and for me personally, I think what I've been impressed with the most with him, obviously his leadership is uncanny at that age. Obviously this team responds to him, and we kind of saw a little glimpse of that his rookie year when he came in for Carson Wentz. You saw the team just respond. They just gravitated out of nowhere. The team just started playing a little bit better, right? But you really see it come into form this season, right? And his breakout game came against the Minnesota Vikings, the first of many, right? Where he was just as sharp as any. He probably one of his best performances throwing the ball. We can debate it, all throughout the season, because he's had many of these performances. You can debate the Pittsburgh game, when he was just airing it out with AJ Brown. You could probably throw in the first New York Giants matchup. But overall, Jalen Hurts has just been an uncanny leader. And again, what's impressed me the most about him has been his development in terms of accuracy and poise, and being able to carve it up in the middle of the field. He's actually been utilizing the entire field. So I have to ask you, what's been the most impressive observation from you in terms of Jalen Hurts' development and just his overall play from week 1 up until now? What's impressed you the most about this young man?
The simple fact is that he has elevated the team. He has elevated the play of the team. And I think it transcends past just offensive play. I mean, yes, he's bailed us out of games like Indianapolis, where he single-handedly bailed us out, right? He closed out the Dallas game.
Yeah, Jacksonville as well, yeah.
Yeah, they could not get that man off the field on third down. Dallas couldn't in Philly in that week 6 matchup. Like, to me, he has just completely elevated the play of everybody around him. And if you ask me, like, beyond the franchise quarterback, a franchise quarterback just means you have all the skill set. When you get past the franchise quarterback conversation, when you talk about the category of elite guys, in my opinion, an elite player needs to elevate the play of others around them. And I think Jalen Hurts is demonstrating that he's that type of player, that he elevates the play of everybody around him. And, think about it, Tone. I know you heard the noise. I heard the noise where they were like, A.J. Brown's numbers aren't going to be that good. Devontae Smith's going to be held back by Jalen Hurts. Oh, boy.
Career years by both.
Yeah, if he made those comments, it's looking real rough right now, man, because, man, I mean, AJ almost put up 1,500 yards. I mean, Devontae set the reception record for wide receivers for the Eagles. Like, I mean, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, the only thing we're missing is Goddard.
Right, and honestly, you can make an argument he would have cracked 1,000 yards if he didn't get hurt.
Exactly. I got a feeling Goddard might be that guy to start setting some records next year, to be honest. Because, I honestly think that there's a lot of talent there. But to be fair, we heard other comments say that if you subtract Jalen Hurts and insert another quarterback that's at least competent, the offense wouldn't skip a beat. Well, that turned out to be not true. And I think what happened, Tone, in my opinion, is people remember the old way of coaching this game and how ineffective RPOs once were in the league. There was a time to where the NFL, it caught the NFL off guard with Colin Kaepernick and some guys, and then the NFL adjusted.
Right.
Well, man, when you get guys like Josh Allen and you get guys like Jalen Hurts out there, it's really difficult to defend those dudes because we're pretty much outflanking you in the box in the run game. And then if you got guys that are starting to see the field well and they got good enough arms, Josh Allen's on a whole nother level when it comes to arm strength, but just seeing the ball well, seeing the field well, and having enough arm talent to really beat you like that, it's difficult to defend that, man. I mean, these guys are doing a lot pre and post snap in terms of reading. And I think that kind of got left out of the conversation. And I think the reason that occurred, to be fair, Tone, is I think there was a time in the NFL where there wasn't that many coaches who were able to build offensive systems and endure the system long enough to take advantage of the players. Now we see this. Now we see this happening. And to be fair, I think the play has elevated. I mean, there were guys like, wasn't it Pat White used to play for West Virginia back in like the 2000s. Like there was guys like that came through the, college, then came into league, played with Rich Rodriguez and all those guys. But that's a different level player from a guy like, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. These guys are just completely different levels in their ability and what they're doing pre and post snap. And I think it's incredibly difficult to defend them, man. Like it's incredibly tough to defend them. And we even saw that last week, man, with Jalen Hurts. In my opinion, they played a very, very safe game plan. The goal is to get a win and get that young man out of there healthy. And we saw that the offense isn't quite right if you can't have all the elements of the offense together. And let's hope he's healthy, man. I hope this extra week off, man. I hope we get somewhat healthy. I mean, no one's going to be completely healthy, but give me a 90% Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into the shoulder injury and the potential impact that may have in the long term. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. You guys are locked in on Chalk It Up Sports with your guy Tone DeShields II. I'm joined by Gate City Sports, man, one of the smartest guys dissecting this football game, man. He does amazing work. Make sure you guys subscribe to his channel as well. I'm grateful to him for taking the time out to come onto the channel. Again, smash that like button. You guys are locked in on Chalk It Up Sports. Continue to remain engaged in the live chat. You brought up the RPO and how coaches have struggled to kind of build offenses around that concept and sort of essentially disregard the complexities of the RPO. And you also brought up how he's elevating guys. I kind of have a two-part question for you. Why do you think it's so hard for national pundits or even just anybody, right? Why do you think it's so hard for most people to believe or accept that Jalen Hurts is capable of elevating his teammates despite what they've done before him and despite what their talent level is already? Why do you think it's so hard for people to believe that he's elevating guys around him? And also, why do you think the RPO gets disrespected as it pertains to Jalen Hurts? Because by my estimation, there is a level of complexity with the RPO. You're doing a lot of reading and reacting, a lot of timing, right? So first, why do you think it's hard for people to believe that he's elevating guys? And the second part is, why do you think people aren't giving Jalen Hurts enough credit as it pertains to this RPO system?
I think it's the classic argument of when you have large corporations and large businesses, sometimes they're much slower to change. You know what I mean? When you got a big, massive machine like that, it's difficult to change. And I think that, us as smaller content creators and smaller publications, I think we have the advantage into seeing these trends, being able to quickly change our narratives to match with what's going on. And I think when you look at an organization like ESPN, you look at some of these other organizations, FX1, all these, these groups,
right?
Those are massive organizations that have who knows how many hours and hours and hours and hours and different people basically putting out this content. And you've created this narrative that becomes, I think, in my opinion, Tone, and I think is what you may be getting to, which is it's hard to walk it back. It's hard to walk the narrative back that you built. And I think there's a few people who are really good at just saying, like, I was wrong. My bad. The narrative is, I got to change my narrative because, like, the results on the field are showing us something completely different. And I think that the larger looming narrative that once existed was that, offenses built RPOs because quarterbacks could not read traditional offensive sets, couldn't read the field that way, couldn't get offenses into rhythm that way. And I do think that there's an element of that that's true, clearly. But also, I think what they forgot alongside of that is that coaches didn't have the creativity to capitalize. And now I think you're seeing a certain level of athlete meeting a certain level of coaching ability forming together. And I think it's going to, people are, I think, really sleeping on a lot of dudes coming up. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Trey Lance and what's going on there in San Francisco, but Trey Lance is that style quarterback, very minimal experience, needs time, needs, reps, needs those type of things to happen. You go to Chicago and you look at Justin Fields. There you go. Malik Willis out there in Tennessee. Like, you're going to see, in my opinion, Tone, you're going to see a lot more of these guys get into the league. I really do. Now, I'm not saying that the Joe Burrows and those type of passers won't exist, but by the way, in my opinion, Joe Burrow is not exactly a statue. Now, I wouldn't put him in that category, but he's not a statue.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you. There was, I think it was the Chiefs matchup, if I'm not mistaken. He did some running in that game. Yeah. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are statues, really. The only statue that really exists still to this day is Tom Brady. Other than that, and Kirk Cousins. But, You know, I think most of these quarterbacks really aren't necessarily statues, but they're not necessarily defined as being dual threat quarterbacks. I don't think you can last in this NFL unless you've been in the NFL for a long time. I don't think you can last in this NFL without having any kind of wheels. You got to have some kind of wheels on you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we're seeing that the style of play is it's drastically changing. And then even the guys that I don't think are generally thought of in that realm, like your Justin Herberts, your Trevor Lawrences, your Joe Burrows, those guys aren't statues. They're not. The only guy I can really think of who's definitely like a pro style set, a little bit more of a limited statue type quarterback would be like your Mac Jones, like a Mac Jones.
Yeah, I see that.
Like he's not like gonna, he's not gonna break you down. I would say that Bailey Zappi, who's the backup there, a little bit more like that. But to be fair, I think this point often gets lost on people. Mobility in the pocket doesn't necessarily mean leaving the pocket and breaking you down off the ball the way that Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, those guys can do. Russell Wilson, it also means just subtle manipulations of the pocket. Tom Brady does that. Drew Brees was able to do that. Those subtle manipulations of the pocket to stay alive. And I think that, guys like Mac Jones and then, Bailey Zappi, these guys that are not super gifted athletes. So they're nowhere near the level of like the guys we named before, the Justin, Fields, the Malik Willises, the Trey Lances, the Jalen Hurts, all those guys, the younger guys that just came before them. But they're also not quite as athletic as a Joe Burrow, as a Trevor Lawrence, as a Justin Herbert. You know what I mean? Like they're a tier below them too. Those are the guys that like you better learn how to manipulate the pocket, make those subtle manipulations to stay alive, because you're just not a dynamic athlete. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe I'm partial, Tone, because I was a sub 6 foot quarterback and I got by on my ability to operate out of basically option-based offense, to be quite honest, as a quarterback. Now I played in a completely different era, but that's maybe I'm empathetic because of those points. But I will say that I do see a generalized trend here. I mean, you could just look at the drafts and see kind of like who's coming out of them. And even the guys that we think of being like, oh, they'll pick you apart from the pocket. Those dudes got mobility. Like they do got some mobility to them.
So why do you think, because again, Jalen Hurts brings a dynamic to the quarterback position that is beginning to become a deeper trend. And we've seen his game go to a level that we haven't seen before. Like to say he's the same quarterback from last year, or to say you're completely unimpressed, is just being disingenuous, right? And I think it's also disingenuous to say that he's not elevating guys or making guys better or putting guys in position. Why do you think it's hard for people to believe that Jalen Hurts is actually elevating the players around him?
I think some people will look at the baseline stats of passing yards. They'll see how many rushing attempts he has on the season. And they'll make some statements that I generally agree with, which is one can be a dynamic athlete and still not required to run the ball over 120 attempts on the season. I agree with those statements. One can say that to prolong and kind of like keep your career going as long as possible, that maybe operating a little bit more from the pocket, maybe not taking those big hits. I think it's a very complex argument, because the flip side to that is that you still get injured in the pocket too. And there are some dudes that are better at avoiding contact than others. I mean, to be quite fair about the situation. So, I mean, I think people look at those things, Tone, and then they say like, oh, like it's the same Jalen Hurts, right? He's still running the ball. He's still, you know what I mean? Like that, but they don't see the subtle improvements he made in terms of like, we got him a guy that can run in breaking routes, and now he's throwing the ball across the middle of the field. You got Dallas Goedert, now you got A.J. Brown. He's definitely working, that interior middle part of the field now, in between the hashes. You see that the advancements he made over the offseason, just the work ethic of this young man. This dude has a tremendous work ethic, which is, I knew the guy's reputation, but I didn't see this coming. Like this dude, this is next level in terms of the work ethic.
Yeah, you heard after the Giants game, immediately after, he pulled Nick Sirianni to the side, and I think Nick Sirianni spoke about this on WIP Monday morning. He said immediately after the game, Jalen Hurts pulled him to the side and said, look, I understand you gave us off Monday, but I need you, Shane, and Brian, I need you guys to come to the facility. We need to work out some things and review this tape, right? And this has been my last question specifically about Hurts, and I want to kind of get into the playoffs and potentially what's to come, and also, injury concerns, so on and so forth. You mentioned his work ethic. This guy, his like I mentioned, his leadership is uncanny. His approach to his craft, his commitment to his craft is something I've never felt or really seen in Philadelphia the way that we're seeing it, right? And this is not to disparage Michael Vick or disparage Nick Foles or Carson Wentz or Donovan McNabb or Randall Cunningham. This is or Ron Jaworski. This is not to disparage those guys, but Jalen Hurts seems to be moving at a different frequency. He seems to be moving at a different vibration at the quarterback position than we've ever seen. And you could probably go beyond just Philadelphia. He's just so ahead of his years. And I think because of his mindset, the way he speaks in his press conferences, the way he carries himself, the kid's only 24. But I think because of that, people kind of forget that he is at the age he's at and he's far from a finished product, right? So, with this guy approaching the game the way he does, what do you think his ceiling is? Like, what do you think a finished product of Jalen Hurts actually looks like? Because I have a hard time figuring out what the ceiling is, especially when you consider the jump he's made from year 2 to year 3.
I think he's going to be one of a few names that gets mentioned in the new era of football. When I was a kid growing up, we had the Boomer Esiasons and the Dan Marinos, and we had those guys back in that era of football. Now, us being Eagle fans, we saw the first real experiment here with Randall Cunningham, the ultimate weapon. So that's, I was more so focused on that. And we saw Steve Young kind of come around, who's a little bit more mobile of a quarterback as well. I think that, you fast forward, you go into the Peyton Manning, right? And the Tom Brady's and the Donovan McNabb era, right? Drew Brees, all those guys. Well, now we're in this new era where it's Josh Allen, it's Joe Burrow, it's Patrick Mahomes. I think, to be fair, I think Jalen Hurts is solidly in that conversation right now. I think he's one of those dudes, and I think he's going to be remembered that way if he reaches what I think is his ceiling. Because I don't think this is a 1 year glimpse. I don't think that's what this is. I think this is just a young man that, he puts the work in, and you can't predict that. You know what I'm saying? You cannot predict. You can get to know a guy. You can say man, this guy's hungry. He wants it, but you never really know. Not only does he have the work ethic, but he apparently has the ability to also learn the concepts and take what he's learning and implement it. And that's kind of the tricky part when it comes to these things. And this young man's showing you that he can do it. Look, his father coaches, football, high school football. His mother is a middle grades teacher. You know what I mean? When you get to know a little bit more of his background and his story,
he was born a
student. It makes more sense now. This definitely makes more sense.
So to put a button on it, would you consider Jalen Hurts to be a top 10 quarterback in this NFL?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd go as far as saying it right now. He's in the top 5-6 conversation for me.
Really?
Yeah,
really. Because for me, I try not to let my love for this team and my love for Jalen Hurts to try to cloud my judgment. I try to be as unbiased as I can. Not saying that's what you're doing, but I actually in my live stream earlier, and I actually just posted a short on YouTube indicating that I kind of put him in that 7 to 10 range, and it's fluid for me, right? Mm-hmm. I don't believe he's 10. I actually think he's closer to 7. Sure. But I'm not gonna argue with someone who has him in that 6 range, because when you think, I try to think about the guys who I would put ahead of him, right? Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Obviously Tom Brady is still playing, Aaron Rodgers is still playing, so I feel like you have to count those guys. So what is that, 6 right there, like 5 or 6 right there? So I try to still respect the OGs in this thing, even though I know they're on the way out, but they're still a threat. I think, to your point, you have him in that 6 area, right? I think that's,
I put him right around that area.
I think that's very fair. I'll probably put him at 7 to 6 area.
Mm-hmm.
So
again, I would probably put him above Justin Herbert at this point.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Let's. I know. I said this is probably gonna be the last Jalen Hurts topic, but you said something really interesting. I need you to open that up for me. Flush that out. What puts him ahead of Justin Herbert for you? Because a lot of people will consider that to be a blasphemous statement. I don't, but a lot of people will.
Yeah. In my opinion, Justin Herbert's he's a really good football player. He is. However, with that said, when you're going in and you're trying to game plan and you're trying to stop this team, you're holding both these teams up. In my opinion, when you're sitting down and you're coming with that game plan, it is incredibly harder to guard Jalen Hurts than Justin Herbert. And it's not shade at Justin Herbert because he's a very good player. Hurts is, I mean, it's getting to the point to where this young man he's becoming almost impossible to defend if you don't have certain style players. You better have guys who can contain. You better have guys who can read. You better have some dudes that can read. And it's almost impossible to try to man up on this guy. You try to man up on if you try to man up on Jalen Hurts, he's going to burn you all day. Whether it's through his receivers beating man coverage, because I'm sorry, but A.J. Brown's the best in the business at beating man coverage right now.
Yeah, I actually have a stat. According to PFF, he's ranked first in the NFL in receiving yards versus single coverage with 910 receiving yards. Over 70% of his receiving yards are accounted for in single coverage. He is a man beater.
Yep. His ball placement right now has just been improving. The timing he's throwing the ball with. I mean, to me, he's elevated himself above Justin Herbert. Now, I don't think they're like worlds apart, but I'm just saying, if I'm on the ropes and I'm trying to pressure you, I feel much better with my game plan against Justin Herbert than Jalen Hurts, because Jalen can break you down even if you do everything right. Just ask Detroit. Like, you can put him in 3rd and 15 and bring the house, and he just walk right by you for 16 yards. I mean, he's really difficult to defend. He just is. Like, he adds another dimension that Justin Herbert he doesn't have. And it's not that Justin Herbert's not good. It's not that Justin Herbert couldn't operate an RPO offense, because he can't. Not quite as dynamic, though, in my opinion. I think Jalen's just a little bit more dynamic of a player, personally.
You guys are locked in on Chalking Up Sports. I'm here with Gate City Sports, man. He is coming with the hot fire, and I appreciate him. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. Appreciate all the constant support and the constant engagement. Let's do some shout-outs real quick. Shout out to Jinx Wolf. Shout out to Smitty Eagle, Mrs. Bird Gang, Nina Alston, Quincy the Great, Drew Johnson. Appreciate you guys. Also appreciate you other guys who haven't necessarily spoken in the live chat, but make yourself known. Make sure we know who we're speaking to. We appreciate all the love and support. Moving the conversation forward, Steve, the Eagles are 14-3. They're now in the playoffs. Everyone is 0-0, but the Eagles have the number 1 seed, right? And that can't go unnoticed. That shouldn't be understated. Granted, the past couple seasons, the number 1 seed has been knocked out pretty early in the playoffs. So some people debate the value of that number 1 seed. I think the number 1 seed will always have value, will always be paramount, because you have that extra time off, right? Speak on the importance of this bye week. Speak on the importance of having that extra week off when it as it pertains to this coaching staff, because in my humble opinion, I think the coaching staff has kind of been lollygagging the past few weeks. Granted, Hurts has been injured. Many other things have been going on, but I kind of feel like from that Chicago game up until now, the coaches have kind of been mailing it in, and what it stood out even more in the Saints game, because I feel like they didn't do enough to try to put Gardner Minshew in a position to succeed. But overall, it seems like the coaching has kind of fallen flat the past few weeks. Speak on the importance of this bye week and what these coaches can do, or what they need to do to get back to the form they've been in throughout the season.
I'll say the first thing is my comments after the Saints game is that game plan should have been dead on arrival. Wow. You cannot close your eyes and pretend that Gardner Minshew is Jalen Hurts. That is just a faulty way of trying to operate your offense. And that's what it felt like to me, as if they tried to do. And I see it both ways. On one hand, that pick 6 down in the red zone, while I don't, I can agree with people say, man, like, Steve, that should not have been called. I hear you. My Lord, you've got to read the leverage there. You have got to read the leverage there.
Is that what A.J. Brown was talking about in his post-game interview?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they bracketed him, and then you can see Lattimore is sitting all over the route. He knew it was coming. I couldn't tell from my angle looking at it from the All-22. I couldn't tell, but A.J. was saying that he was trying to tell Minshew, was trying to get his attention and say, go away from this side. Like, they're on this. I don't know if that part of it's true, but I do know as a quarterback, you got to look and see that. You have to see that. And that was the disappointing part to me, Tone, about Minshew is from what I knew about Minshew coming into that game and from what we had saw previously is that the one thing that was, positive about Gardner Minshew is that he normally made really smart and really decisive pre-snap reads and got the ball out of his hands quickly. Man, after he made that play, I was like, maybe we need to revisit that conversation. Maybe we need to go back and maybe watch some of these other interceptions, although he hasn't thrown a lot of them in his career. Maybe we need to look at the circumstances a little closer of when he made these mistakes, because I could not understand how he didn't see it, Tone. That one, it blew my mind how in the world he didn't see that. I mean, Lattimore was all over that football. Yeah. With that said, game plan should have been dead on arrival. It should have been. It was a ridiculous game plan. I'm not gonna lie. And look, I've been a really big supporter of Shane Steichen. I think Shane Steichen's going to be a head coach somewhere. I think he's done that well with, speaking of our last conversation, Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. I think he's done that well with both of these quarterbacks, that somebody who's got a young quarterback is going to want that young, that young coach coaching their young quarterback, in my opinion. In terms of what you do right now, like, you've had this downward turn. Things are not going that well, even though, you count the Chicago game, it was a win. You count the Giants game, it was a win. Your last 4, you're 2-2. I think you have to really be honest in your self-scouting. You have to really pay attention to what teams are doing to take things away. And it's going to be difficult, right, Tone? Because 2 of those games are not with Jalen Hurts. And that I think, in my opinion, that can kind of cloud how you self-evaluate. Because there's probably going to be a part of you that thinks to yourself, if Jalen's on the field, this doesn't happen. I think that can make things a little tougher to give a true self-evaluation, if I'm being honest. But they're going to have to really sift through, and they're going to have to be honest with themselves. They're going to have to really double check. If you come away with an opinion that says, like you go to the Gardner Minshew play, if you say, if Jalen's not in the game, this mistake doesn't happen, you need to double and triple check yourself there. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, maybe it doesn't happen, but is it still the right call for the situation we're in? I'm not saying never run an in-breaking route off an RPO look, but at the same time, like, is that really the right, you know what I mean? Like, when you're backed up on your own 10-yard line, is that the call you really want to make? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's things like that. You have to be really honest in your self-assessment here. And I think the more honest you are, and the more honest you are about the health of your players, you have to know that, man. I mean, Lane Johnson's a big question mark. I really don't know what to expect there. Jalen Hurts, I have a slightly good feeling that even though he said he was really sore coming out of this game, the SC joints are kind of a funny sprain to have, or I don't know if it's a sprain or a tear personally. I know they haven't said anything about it being a tear, but
they've been very inconsistent with how they've been describing this injury to the public. The first few weeks he's been sore. Now all of a sudden he was in tremendous pain. It's kind of just been all over the place. And Nick Sirianni, I feel like he leans too much into the gamesmanship.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like, I'm somewhat confident that, okay, the worst part about the SC joint is, and think about this, Ton, since they changed the ruling about where you can hit a quarterback, and you have to be careful about getting into the neck and the head of the quarterback, most guys are coming at the chest. That's where that helmet and the shoulder pad's going, into your chest. I wouldn't be shocked to see more of these SC joint injuries kind of happen, but I do think that the weather and the climate, those kind of things in Chicago, I think played a role that, basically playing on a sheet of ice out there in that game, I think they had a large part to do with it, to be honest. With that said, just the angle of that hit, you kind of knew like, oh man, that's going to hurt. I didn't know there'd be an injury from that, but I was like, man, that's going to hurt. Like I could see he's going to be a little sore from that hit. Yeah. With that said, how healthy is Jalen? So now you got to be honest about your self-evaluation about how teams are defending you. And you have to be honest about how healthy your player is to what you can do to win versus what they're doing to, like, kind of counter you. That's tough, man. If you're really, with the playoffs, I don't think you can protect Jalen. I just don't think you can do that. I think if you put him out there at quarterback, it's got to be all in.
All in, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Does this coaching staff's, in saying everything you've said, right? Does this coaching staff's inexperience concern you with the current situation they're in? They've never had a first round bye before. They're the number 1 seed. They're going to be starting in the divisional round instead of the wild card round like they did last year. I think that wild card game last season was a very, very strong learning experience for everybody involved. Everyone looked like they didn't belong in that game. Everybody. I'm not going to point out specific players or specific, staff members, everybody looked like they did not belong on that field. Everybody looked like they left everything back in Philly. So I guess my question for you is, does this coaching staff's inexperience concern you in this situation, in the divisional round? I got to admit, for myself, I do have some concerns because I think about the Doug Peterson regime, and they were far from perfect. But during that run with Nick Foles, they had to adjust their entire offense, and they managed to push the right buttons at the right time. Do you trust this coaching staff to push the right buttons at the right time when it matters most?
Tough to say, man. Until you see it applied on the field and in the calls, it's tough to say. I will say that some of the mistakes that I have saw are avoidable. Some of them has to do more so with personnel and players. I definitely think there was an element of what they call KYP, know your personnel, when it came to Gardner Minshew. I do think he made some mistakes there. I also think Gardner didn't do the greatest job of reading coverage, to be quite honest, in his starts. Now, I thought he had some bright moments in Dallas, but, in the pregame show that, it was like LB, Mike, Philly Mike, myself, Philly Fresh, we were all kind of like talking before that Dallas game. And I said, I had a weird feeling it was going to come down to putting up field goals versus putting the ball in the end zone in the red zone. And I wasn't overly confident in Gardner Minshew's ability to do that in Dallas. And, even last week, when you stripped away the RPO, you stripped away some of the offense, we were not very good in the red zone, to be quite honest. We were particularly bad at third down, particularly bad in the red zone. Now, I will say I think a lot of that stuff, I'm not in panic mode just because I think a lot of that has to do with stripping away a lot of the offense, to be quite honest. With that said, the golden example we can flip to, which is the Doug Peterson 2017 magical run they had to start, being honest in their self-evaluations. They had to actually start flipping things. They had to, but the problem was that they had a different quarterback going for the duration of the rest of the season. That's the part that's like, it's substantially different. So it's difficult, man. I mean, I think they're in a little bit of a pickle if they don't have complete health from their guys. I mean, Lane to me is the ticket. How healthy is Lane Johnson? Because I think if Lane Johnson is fairly healthy, I think, Jalen will probably be, I'm hoping by 2 weeks from now, Jalen's going to be not 100%, but healthy enough to where you're not sitting there worried about necessarily re-agitating, re-injuring it because of the previous one. It's just more so like any given Sunday, anything can happen. You know what I mean? But it's not because of that per se. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's the health of the team? How are they going to deal with this in terms of their play calling, in terms of the designs that they come up with? Are they going to do some things that take some of the pressure off of guys? I talked about, I didn't publish a video yet this week just because I had to kill the video I was going to do just because I was like, sometimes you got to cancel a video. You're like,
no, I know what you mean. Sometimes, you watch it back and it's like, that didn't age as well as I thought it would.
Yeah. So one of the things I talked about was you look at Jalen Hurts. I thought they had a weird decision to open up the Giants game. You're dealing with the shoulder injury. Now, I've dealt with AC, never SC. Okay, I know it's got to hurt a little bit because it's like right here, but I've never dealt with that particular injury. I will say normally when you're dealing with the shoulder, then you're dealing with mobility in the shoulder. So I can understand coming out and going 8 passes or so, giving some give-me's to Jalen Hurts, trying to establish a rhythm, trying to get the mobility in the shoulder. I get it.
Right.
But there's always 2 sides to every decision. And the other side to that decision is that, you could have also just kind of played it more so to where we have the more dominant line going against second and third team. And I know that narrative is being a little overblown because the Giants had a lot of second team guys who played a ton on the season because of injuries. So it wasn't like your normal just backups just getting in some playing time here. With that said, I still feel like you got your starting offensive line out there for the most part, minus, Lane Johnson. You got your tight ends, you kept like 4 on the roster. I mean, for God's sake, use them. I felt like he probably could have gotten a little bit into the bully ball. I do think that I get the criticism there from people is just like, to me, it's a little bit of you're dealing with an issue with shoulder mobility. I don't know how much of that is them testing Jalen to see where he was. I don't know, man. Like
that was my initial thought. I thought they came out with the thought process of, okay, let's try to get this arm warm. That was honestly what I thought to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to weigh that because I'm not in the room So I don't know. I know that it didn't go quite as well as we wanted it to. That's for sure, because we just didn't, and I know people are saying like, well, we couldn't get the numbers in the run game. It's like, man, Stoutland's pretty creative. Stoutland could have got to the edges. Stoutland could have done some things in terms of gap blocking. Like, we could have done some things in terms of misdirection and giving you some eye candy and wrinkles. Like, I definitely feel like we could have done some stuff. But with that said, man, like, it's just like, I can't, it's so hard to scrutinize it just because, like, I don't know all the external things to judge. I don't know what the conversations were that were taking place. I just know that the end result, it just felt like, hey, man, like, if we're just talking about a singular goal of winning this game, dominating this game, and getting Jalen Hurts off the field comfortably, I just felt like we could have got in there and mixed it up with them physically, pushed them off the ball, and you know what I mean? Like, got your 20-point lead. We were almost there. I mean, to be fair, we were up 19-0 at half. Yeah. And then, get your backups in there.
The difference between field goals and touchdowns, right? Exactly. That's because they showed an ability to move that ball. Granted, all things considered, they moved that ball, but that's the difference between field goals and touchdowns. That game could have easily been 28-0.
Yeah, and like I was tracking it. I mean, we were 5 of 14 on third down. I was tracking like all the first half third downs, and just like there was one possession in particular. I think it was the let's see, first, second, third, fourth. Hang on, I'm counting down here.
No, you're good.
It was the fifth drive. It was the fifth drive that resulted in a field goal. Okay, we're in the fifth drive, so it would have been towards the back half of the second quarter, so back half of the first half.
Got it.
And you had a Boston Scott run, and then you end up getting a sack, and you went from like a third and kind of goal situation to where like you're like all the way back at the 20 something. Like,
I remember that. Yeah,
it was ridiculous. It's like you lost your momentum there. And it was like, man, we had a couple of situations like that to where we kept getting it down into like the red zone, then we get pushed back.
Yeah, if it wasn't a penalty, it was a sack or a tackle for loss. However you want to define it.
Landon touched the goal.
Just that penalty kind of pissed me off because Landon has had a habit of having these very boneheaded penalties, but also even then, I kind of felt like the ref was nitpicking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think every officiating crew calls it. I do think by the letter of the law, he was guilty.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you that not every officiating crew is calling it.
Yeah, definitely. A few more questions for you, then I'm gonna get you out of here, my man. I appreciate you as always. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Continue to stay engaged on the content. I'm here with my man Steve Hyder from Gate City Sports. Does amazing work. Provides a lot of content for the cerebral football fan or any football fan, really. He's going to give you the perfect analysis and the unbiased analysis. That's the most important thing. Before we get into some of the before we get into some of the potential playoff matchups, there is a topic I want to broach with you, and this is more so on the defensive side of the ball. I'm growing to be a bit concerned with Darius Slay. And, there have been games where, and correct me if I'm wrong, I lean on you in this regard, right? At times he's looked old, and I don't know if he's dealing with something that's lingering a little bit. I know earlier in the season his back kind of tightened up a little bit. It could be a plethora of things, but over the past several weeks, Darius Slay hasn't seemed to be as much of a force as he started the season. Now, granted, him and Bradbury, they've been, some of the best in the league in terms of limiting quarterbacks to an extremely low passer rating and completion percentage. That's been their thing. But also, he's kind of regressed to the mean a little bit in terms of quarterbacks passer rating on him. And look, Darius Slay, I will still take an 80% or a 75% Darius Slay over most DBs in this NFL. Let me make one thing clear. But what's been your evaluation of Darius Slay's play over the past several weeks?
Not as far down on his play as much as I was on his conduct as a teammate.
Expand on that.
You can't throw guys under the bus, man. I know what he was doing, and he was right. It was Josiah Scott's mess up. He was right. It was a cover 2 call. No one should get deeper than Josiah Scott. he's supposed to play the underneath flats. I will say, as a veteran corner, though, when there's no one releasing to the flats, I would expect a veteran corner to get a little deeper in his drop, though. You know, I get what he's saying. Technically, he's there to cover the flats. Josiah Scott's supposed to be over top of him. Nothing should get above and past Josiah Scott. I just don't think you throw your player. You don't throw your guy underneath the bus there, man. Like, especially on Twitter, bro. Like, come on, man. Like, come on, man. Like, come on. Slay.
Especially
like,
when you had that C. Especially when you had that C on your chest, right? You had that captain on your chest. You got to connect stuff a little better than that.
Yeah, and I get that fans were coming at him, and a lot of them didn't have understanding what was going on. I thought he could have probably explained the situation without using names. You know what I mean? Everyone would have got what he was saying, but you didn't physically say the person's name and throw him underneath the bus. You know what I mean? I will say, though, that I think Darius, to his credit, is often given the side that does not receive as much safety help. And we saw that, you know, he didn't really have a ton of safety help. You know, it was pretty late for Epps to try to get over the top there on the touchdown, you know, last weekend. But furthermore, I felt like he was a little lazy in coverage there, if I'm being honest. I felt like they kind of felt like the game was put away, and then they you know, the Giants kind of punched him in the mouth for that one, for not playing it all the way through to the whistles, to the clock, you know, hit zeros. I felt like they caught him on that one, to be honest. So I felt like he disengaged from the game a little bit on that play, to be honest with you. But on the one that was previous, you know, that had the 3rd and 30 completion, I don't think it was necessarily Darius Slay's fault. I do think it was Josiah Scott's fault. With that said, man, like, you know, it's tough, bro. I mean, you got a nickel corner in there who's not your starter, and he's like I said, I do think Josiah Scott is pretty good if you put him in the short zone. I think if you allow him to play in the short zone and stick the flats in that area, I do think Josiah Scott's got some utility, some use. When he has to match and carry, I don't think it's been that great this year, to be quite honest. Josiah Scott's not an unathletic dude at all. Like, he's fairly athletic. He's been caught in the trail position quite a bit, though, for a dude that's got a little, you know, speed to him. Like, he's just not Avonte Maddox out there in terms of his actual movement, right? That's where sometimes, like, there's 40 time and there's your actual movement ability with pads on. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
do you think he's just not to cut you off, Steve, but do you think he's second guessing his movements? Do you think he's not playing the game instinctually, and that's why he doesn't seem to be moving as quickly as he probably should?
I would love to have heard his thoughts on what happened on that 3rd and 30 play. I mean, what were you looking at? What held you? Why did someone get over the top of you? Like, it shouldn't happen, man. Like, simply put, I mean, what was going through your brain? What happened, man? Like, what caught you up? Like, I mean, I don't honestly, Tone, I don't have the answer for it. I don't know. With that said, I mean, I will say that, you know, when you look at Darius Slay, you know, you got an undrafted rookie free agent, Reed Blankenship, who has played very well. He has. At the end of the day, he's still an undrafted rookie free agent out there. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be some things that these guys got to do to help him out, right? I thought Josiah Scott, you know, when you put those guys in the lineup together, I think it got a little tough, man. I think it got a little tough for the coverage. But then, you know, immediately you get C.J. Gardner-Johnson back, and I thought the coverage, you know, mind you, the Giants aren't not challenging you that much, to be quite honest, in the passing game. But I thought most of the production that the Giants got off the passing game was off of Webb basically breaking containment from the pocket. And, you know, it's hard as a defensive back to hold a guy for, you know, over 2.5 seconds. It's a difficult ask of any corner. So I thought they got a lot of gimmicky kind of plays like that to where he just broke containment, you know, played off schedule, got some throws off that way. But I thought that, you know, Tone, to be honest, like, I thought those two guys, and then the fact that Slay does get matched up a little bit more one-on-one, you know, you're normally, especially if Bradbury's carrying a speed guy, you're probably going to you're going to shade your safety towards Bradbury more, in my opinion, because Bradbury's not going to turn to run with true speedsters.
He's more physical.
Exactly. Yeah. Now it's more Slay's game, but I mean, you know, the numbers don't lie. He got beat a few times, man. Slay's got beaten a few times down the stretch here. So I thought the way you phrased it made sense, which is he was playing at such an elite level that he started to come back towards the mean.
Yeah. And because, again, it's not like Darius Slay hasn't been the ultimate liability. Again, like Darius, I think because this team started off the season at such a high level, whenever they start to come back to earth ever so slightly, we notice it. And you kind of begin to judge it a little unfairly, But that's the curse of the gifted, right? That's the curse of greatness. When you're the top dog, when you're playing at such a high level, people start to get accustomed to that. Fans become spoiled, and when you slip, fans notice, and it's pretty that simple. It's pretty simple. My final question, before we get out of here, I kind of want to touch on some of these playoff matchups that's coming up on Wild Card Weekend. The 4th seed Buccaneers face off against the Cowboys, who are the 5th seed at home. The Giants, 6th seed, go on the road to face the Vikings, who are the 3rd seed. The Seahawks go on the road to face off with the 2nd seed 49ers. So the 4 potential matchups the Philadelphia Eagles could potentially have are the Cowboys, Buccaneers, Giants, or Seahawks. First, what's your thoughts on those 3 matchups, and what do you anticipate the outcome being? And secondly, what's your preferred path to the Super Bowl? Or let's put it to you this way: what's your preferred matchup in the divisional round?
In the division round, the Giants.
That's what I've been telling people. I said, give me the Giants or the Seahawks. I don't care. I don't care if it's the easiest team. Listen, my ego's not that big where I have to play Tom Brady or I have to beat the Cowboys. Sure, it'll be fun. We'll have a nice talking point, but my ego is not that big where I feel like I need to make my job that much harder. So I agree with you, right? Give me the Giants or give me the Seahawks.
Yeah, I look at it and I say the Giants, and I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to throw shade at the Giants or anything like that, but I mean, simply put, I think they're the least talented team inside the playoffs. I mean, you can maybe make the case that the Seahawks are, but
I think the Seahawks are talented. They're young though, but they're
exactly
talented.
They got Kenneth Walker, they got DK Metcalf, they got dudes, man. They got
that corner that they found.
Yeah.
I forget his name, man.
Sam Houston State or whatever it was. He was one of the small Texas schools. Or UTSA. I think he came out of UTSA.
He's tied with C.J. Gardner-Johnson for interceptions. I forget his name.
Yeah,
damn.
I'm looking for you.
Man,
rookie cornerback.
The kid is good.
Not Kobe Bryant. It's the other one. Tariq Woolen.
There we go. Tariq Woolen. He is good.
Yeah,
What's a 5th round draft pick?
Big kid, and he can run. He's a big physical guy.
Do you remember when he was drafted?
I think he was mid-round, third, fourth roundish. I think.
That's a steal.
Yeah.
But yeah, the matchups. Your preferred matchup is the Giants. The Giants are clearly the least talented team in the NFC. Now, obviously matchups matter in this thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think the Giants definitely is the easier matchup. But you never know what may happen, right? What's your thoughts on, Cowboys versus Bucks, Vikings versus Giants, 49ers versus Seahawks? How do you see those 3 games panning out?
Cowboys have the better roster than Tampa Bay. Tom Brady's never lost to Dallas. Dallas hasn't won a road playoff game since like the early 90s. It's tough, man. The Cowboys should be able to go to Tampa and win that game. But everything seems to be in Tampa's favor in terms of the Cowboys just have not been good on the road, and Tom Brady just has not lost to Dallas. So it's going to be fun to watch on Monday night, is all I'm going to say. I don't know who's going to win the game. Personally, neither team really scares me that much.
Do you buy into that grass theory that came out recently, the grass versus turf theory with the Cowboys? Do you buy into that?
To an extent. I can see that their pass rush has been slowed down, but to be fair, their pass rush has slowed down because Micah Parsons has slowed down. I just had a back and forth on Twitter with somebody today where, trying to basically discredit Haason Reddick. And I'm like, he's like trying to throw up charts. I'm like, look, man, the bottom line is that the charts you're throwing up are highly subjective. This is, someone's opinion on something. I mean, you could say that it's unbiased, whatever you want to say. But, if you go back and you just take a look at the pure numbers, the raw data, versus top 16 offensive lines as they're graded. As the top 16 offensive lines, Micah Parsons has 6 pressures versus the top 16 offensive lines. He has 3 sacks. Okay. Well, you take a look at Haason Reddick versus the top 16 offensive lines. He's got 18 pressures and 8.5 sacks. One is not like the other.
We are not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's trying to say oh, well, that includes guards and centers. It was just a really foolish comment. I didn't comment back just because I'm not gonna I feel like at this point you should pay me for what I'm educating you on because like, you know, like this dude and me, we're not friends. Like,
Right.
like
It got
why
to a
should I
point.
give
It
you a
got to a
free
point in the
education?
conversation where you were like,
Yeah.
okay, I know who I'm talking to now. Let me just get
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah, he's like, well, we're not talking about guards and centers. I'm like, man, if you don't understand that the center is very important to protection calls and guards have things to do in protection as well, such as like fanning your protection, like, then you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know, I'm not going to sit here and educate you for free, bro. Like,
You got to pay for this masterclass, kid.
yeah, yeah. It's like, man, we're not friends. Like, if Tone asked me, yeah, me and I'll run film with Tone for him.
I appreciate that, man.
Friends. Yeah, I'm not friends with you, dude. You're a Cowboy fan now. I'm joking. You know, I got friends like you know, like Tuck's. You know, Tuck's my guy. I got a lot of friends that are Cowboy fans. But
yeah, I like those guys. J Tuck, CFT. I like those guys.
Yeah, but you know, like you know, I'm like, I don't know how to help you if you can't understand that. Like, okay, they're saying one thing. They're saying that, oh, Michael Parsons has played way better competition. It's like, well, actually, when I went back and I took a look, and you went through and you look at ESPN's like their top 10 grade. ESPN did a top 10 grading in terms of like offensive tackles and win rate. Lane Johnson shut down Micah Parsons, and then the next time that Lane Johnson and Micah played, they moved Micah over to Jordan Mailata's side, so they just basically completely
gave up.
That. He played off ball against Bakhtiari, however you say his name, the guy from Green Bay. He didn't even play on the ball. He played off the ball. They stacked him as a linebacker. That's an automatic L in my opinion. O'Neal from Minnesota, they didn't play him on O'Neal's side. They played him on the opposite side. So it's kind of like, man, I'm sorry, bro. I don't know how they came up with the gradings, PFF, in terms of saying like, oh, he's played better. But when I go look at the guys that are graded as the top 10 dudes from ESPN, Micah kind of skirted them, to be quite honest. The only guy he really took to task was on Thanksgiving, which was Andrew Thomas, who's ranked 10th, 10 out of 10. Like, that's the only guy he really kind of got. You know, I mean, you can make some arguments. I'd have to go back and watch the Tampa Bay game because Micah split between the left and the right side in the Tampa Bay game. So I'd have to see if his sacks came against Tristan Wirfs or the opposite side. So it's like, to me, it's like, man, there's nuance to this stuff, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all I'm going to say is that Haason Reddick has been absolutely dominant down the stretch, and Micah Parsons has basically become Harry Houdini. Now you see me, now you don't. Like, it's true.
It's fair to say Micah shot his load, and
yeah,
Haason is just beginning to load the gun.
Yeah, he's getting better as the weeks go on. He's gotten better and better and better. Like, you know, like simply put, Haason Reddick has outplayed him inside a division, head up against each other, and versus top 16 offensive lines. I mean, if you want to say Michael Parsons was better against the NFC North, then Haason, have at it. Like, but I mean, like the old dude was trying to use like charts and stuff, trying to show like, you know, they're talking about defensive player of the year, and they're trying to use like run grades. And, you know, so I'm like, look, man, I understand if you're talking about the totality of the work. Cool. I'm just going to ask you this very simple question. You name me the defensive player of the year who won the award solely based upon their prowess as a run defender. Like, come on, man. Like, what are we talking about? Like, you know, listen, so I was just like,
they don't even running in this league isn't even sexy anymore. It's a passing league. So, you know, they're judging guys based off of like their pass rush ability, really.
Yeah. And like I was bringing up points because he's like, oh, PFF has him as having the highest win rate. I'm like, well, ESPN has him as the highest win rate too, but Haason Reddick is right behind him. And by the way, Haason's played 100 less snaps. Like, you know what I mean?
That makes it interesting.
Yeah. So it's like when you really break it down and you break it down by like pressures per snap and pressures per pass rush snap, Haason is way above him. Like, wow. You know, it's like they're both pretty good. They both have pretty big time numbers, but Haason has come on down the stretch and Micah's kind of pulled away. It's like, it's not trying to throw shade at Micah because Micah's a heck of a player, but
definitely.
You know, he's like, well, he's been double teamed, and he's been this, he's been that. I'm like, right, but he's also got dudes holding the ball for 3 seconds. like that's like completely missing from the entire narrative that they were having. Like, I'm like, bro, he's had like 3 or 4. He's had 4 quarterbacks. He had 4 separate quarterbacks hold the ball for 3 seconds or more. And he had 7 quarterbacks hold it for 2.8 seconds or more. Like, come on, man. Like, it's not like one's not like the other. It's like, it's just the easiest thing I could tell him is like, man, one is not like the other. Like when I look through and I look at Haason Reddick, right? So for Haason, let me see real quick. 1 quarterback, 2 quarterback. Haason's only had 3 quarterbacks hold the ball for 2.8 seconds or longer, and only 1 quarterback held it for over 3 seconds. So you could say that Mike is being doubled more. Cool. He's also got quarterbacks hold the ball for 3 seconds, man. Like, teams don't do that against Philly. They're not trying to hold the ball for 3 seconds because they're going to get themselves killed. It's like, I don't get it, man. Like, I'm like looking at these guys. I'm like, I don't get what you're seeing here. Daniel Jones held it for 3.1 seconds against you guys. Then I come down, I look at here. Justin Fields held it for 3.13 seconds. Kirk Cousins held it for 3.05 seconds. Joshua Dobbs held it for 3.08 seconds. Like, yeah, no wonder Mike is getting home. Like,
Yeah,
throw the ball for 3 seconds.
I also think he's wearing down too.
Yeah.
I want to transition. I want to transition to the next matchup, the Vikings Giants matchup. I think that game is going to be a lot better than what people may think. I think the Giants can actually steal that game. What's your thoughts on
that? Pressure can break you, and I don't trust Kirk Cousins versus pressure. I think Kirk Cousins has the better roster than the Giants, clearly, but I think the Giants are very well coached. I was pretty big on Brian Daboll before we hired Nick Sirianni. I had Brian Daboll as my number one overall coach in that process, and then he basically said he's not leaving there, and I didn't blame him. And then, I had to search around, and I ended up coming across Nick Sirianni because of his connections to, going back to our previous coaching staff, what was going on there in Indianapolis with Frank Reich. And I listened to some interviews with Nick Sirianni, and before the Eagles even announced they were interviewing him, I said, like, this is the dude I would honestly hire. I got lucky. I had no clue that they were going to bring this guy in, interview him, and hire him the next day.
Because Nick Sirianni was a ghost. Nobody knew about him.
Yeah, I didn't even know him until I started looking into it, and I was like, "Who is this dude?" And I started listening to him. Like, yeah, this dude fits Philly. Like, this dude's gonna be a good fit here in Philadelphia, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, my original support was behind Deuce Staley, and it just became obvious they weren't going to give Deuce the job. So from there, I was like, Brian Daboll, in my opinion, is probably the best. I just, like I said, man, I think if I'm going to be honest to what my assessments were just a couple of years ago, Brian Daboll's a really good coach, man. I will say that I think there are other people that are a little bit higher on the pressure package you see the Giants do compared to me. I think sometimes you can get carried away with that, and I think it can get you burnt. I think there's a timing to bring in pressure. With that said, Kirk Cousins, he will throw the ball short of the sticks, his Alex rating, which means on third down, will you throw it short of the sticks? Kirk Cousins will. He will. But in saying that, man, if you go all out blitz on him, they got Justin Jefferson, man. So it's going to be an interesting game because you're going to definitely give Justin Jefferson one-on-one opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's funny. Justin Jefferson, as good of a season he's had, he's had these games where he's just giving you donuts, just put up eggs. And, obviously, he's going up against good corners in those games. Jair Alexander. His 3 worst games came against Jair Alexander, Trevon Diggs, I believe, and Darius Slay. Yeah. And I'm curious, what do you think that is? Do you think it's just a mental game? Do you think it's something specific they're actually doing to him? I'm not sure how much Justin Jefferson tape you've seen. But I'm just curious to know if there's anything you may have noticed, anything you may have heard in regards to why he's had these. See, it's one thing to just have a decent game, but he's kind of disappeared against guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Justin Jefferson's it's a little odd. It's a little weird with that one. I think some of that has to do with the fact that Kirk Cousins will grip and throw the football, but also Kirk Cousins makes some foolish mistakes with the ball too. He just does, man. And I know other people were saying like, oh, imagine if the Eagles, Devontae Smith had Kirk Cousins. Nah.
Like I know Kurt has good numbers.
Too, but
every year he throws for over 4,000 yards. Don't get me wrong, Kurt he can throw the rock, but I don't trust his processor, man. Like I don't trust him in that regard.
Exactly, yeah, and that's going to be the thing is like. I look at that game, and I do think that there's a potential for an upset there. I really do. That's why I said that when you asked me, I'm like, I think the realistic one could be the Giants. I think the Giants could pull an upset there, and it could be, the Giants coming into playoffs for round 3.
Because they barely beat them.
I think I even put a tweet out. I think I even put a tweet out. And I know people are riding that San Francisco train. I know that's a great football team. Bro, that is a 7th-round pick in the playoffs playing quarterback. Some point, I think it's going to rear up and bite them in the butt.
And that's where the Eagles pass rush comes in because, the 49ers have the Seahawks. And a lot of people think that 49ers-Seahawks game is a foregone conclusion.
I don't think so.
And, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Pete Carroll's a very good coach.
Yeah, I mean, they only beat them 21-13 in the last time they met. So, I mean, it wasn't like they blew them out of the water. You know what I mean? And, like, I think that you're right. Pete Carroll's savvy. They got a veteran guy in Geno Smith who's not, I don't think Geno's special per se, but he's solid. He's steady. He gets the job done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm proud of Geno, by the way. Really proud of Geno.
Yeah, to me, yeah. I mean, the way things ended in New York to where, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, he's definitely, I don't think anyone would have figured this was going to be the story. You know what I mean? I definitely thought, it was like, man, what are they doing? Brock Osweiler? And I was like, yo, what are they thinking? Like, but I get it now. I mean, to be fair to them, they made the right call on Russ, man. Hey, Russ, NC State grad, bro. I'm not taking shots at you. But I'm just saying, man.
Tread lightly, Gates.
Saying, bro. Don't be trying to lock me out the campus.
Man, but yeah, like that matchup between the 49ers and the Seahawks, I don't think it's going to be as simple as it seems. I think there's going to be some upsets this weekend. I think the Buccaneers beat the Cowboys. I think the Giants beat the Vikings, and I think the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks can beat the 49ers. It's a rivalry game as well, so you can't just think that they're going to the 49ers. All they got to do is just play their play their game. It's a divisional game. Your divisional matchups, they know you, and it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. It's hard.
Yeah, that's true. And it would have been interesting to see, like, Washington kind of crapped the bed, but I thought Washington would have been a really interesting matchup to play. San Francisco, I think the advantage there is that it's hard to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. But in saying that, Washington has a stout defensive line that can shut you down, and their corners can play above average. They can kind of fool you sometimes in coverage a little bit. They got their moments to where they can really be a challenge for you. So I thought that would have been an interesting one, but I will say that Seattle, I think, is also an interesting one because Tariq Woolen's big, physical, can run. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be somewhat athletic, and you have to have a pretty stout defensive line to match up against San Francisco. They got a great O-line, a great D-line. They got good skill position players. Like, you do have to kind of to ride that one out a little bit. It's a matter of, like, can they get a pass rush, though? That's the one thing I don't really know about Seattle. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of their games this year. I'm not overly sure how good their pass rush is, to be honest. And, when you got Nick Bosa across from you, it's tough, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, we're going to begin to close this out. I want to close it out with a rapid fire segment, right? We're going to give out some team awards for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously MVP is a National Football League awards. The entire league, it goes to one guy, right? But I want to focus on the Eagles. I want to give out some awards, and I want to get your take, right? So I'm going to ask you to give out 5 awards, and I want your instant reaction, right? No need to get into a deep explanation. Rapid fire, and I just want to hear where your mind goes with this. Okay, so MVP of the offense, go.
Jalen Hurts.
Okay, MVP of the defense.
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, TJ Edwards, I think, has to be it. Man, that's a good one, bro, because I don't know where to take it.
I was going to give it to TJ, but then I couldn't ignore Haason Reddick's season. Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. But it's so tough, man, because, like, the additions have done so much to help the Eagles. Like bringing in Linville Joseph, but, like, it's like they haven't been here long enough. TJ Edwards, I think he's second all time in tackles now in terms of, like, season total.
Yeah,
I think he just set that mark. So, I mean, that's an interesting one because I do think TJ had a pretty rough game. So it's probably not the best case to make for him at this point because he's coming off a pretty rough game.
Yeah, the pass coverage
probably his worst game of the year, to be quite honest. But I mean, that's a tough one because Hassan's had a great season. I'd say James Bradbury's had a heck of a season. I'd say CJ Gardner-Johnson's had a heck of a season.
Yeah,
I don't know that the Eagles are quite as explosive in the turnover ratio thing if it's not CJ Gardner-Johnson out there. I don't think that the Eagles are quite as locked down without James Bradbury. I don't think the pass rush is as good without Haason Reddick. And
I feel that.
Maybe TJ Edwards is just a guy benefiting from cleaning up from everything. But I thought he had a good season.
What I say about TJ is he's the puppeteer out there. He's the orchestrator. He makes sure everyone's in alignment. That's where his value is. So yeah, let's definitely. Let's move on to the third award. Comeback player of the year for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Overall.
Miles
Sanders.
Really? Interesting. I was going to go Brandon Graham.
Brandon Graham, I could definitely see that because 11 sacks, career total, all that kind of stuff. He had the injury. So, I mean, if you're looking at it from just injury standpoint,
And
like
his first
Miles was
double-digit
just a
sack
little
season.
nagging. Yeah, Miles was just a little nagging injuries. But, man, Miles getting over in a contract year, staying healthy for the majority of the season, getting over, 1,000 yards rushing. Oof, man. He got over double-digit touchdowns, too, after not getting a single touchdown last season.
I still can't believe that, by the way. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're good candidates this year, man. They really are. But I wouldn't hate anybody if they said Brandon Graham just because by the pure definition of, like, injury and overcoming injury,
He's
Brandon
35 years old, double-digit sacks, playing on a pitch count. You know
what I
mean?
Honestly, I kind of felt like they were going to separate from him after this season, but now I'm kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, if he's got one more year left in him and he'll come on a veteran-friendly deal.
He loves
I'd like to have one more year.
I think they'll work something out. Like he's too ingrained in his community. It's some guys that just they'd rather retire before they move. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right. So fourth award, most improved player of the year for the Philadelphia Eagles.
See, now I wish I'd have seen that one coming before because I think Miles would have slid in that one really well. All right, most improved player. This one's actually going to require thought. I'm sorry.
They're good. You're good.
I
got mine, by the way. I wrote the questions, but like I have mine.
I'm trying to think. Like, because I gave Jalen MVP, so I can't really go there. Devontae, I don't think it's fair to say improved because I thought he was pretty dang good last year too.
Right.
Definitely not Quez. Not Quez.
Quez need to hit the weight room. Shit.
Yeah, he definitely does, bro. Landon, I wouldn't say Landon. Most improved player. Javon hit double-digit sacks. You know what? I got to give it out to my guy, Josh Sweat.
That's exactly who I gave it to.
Yeah.
I've been I'm a Josh Sweat guy, and I hold him accountable, and I'm critical of him because I got love for him for real. And I just feel like Josh Sweat, he's just been just wait, like it's almost like he's so close, like you see it. It's like just getting a little faster, just turn that corner a little quicker. And I'm seeing Josh Sweat play at a speed that I've never seen before.
Yeah. No, I mean I think I made a video too, and it was almost the only. At one point, I had made all these predictions, and they all came true at the end of the day. But the one that looked like I was not going to get right was Josh Sweat getting double-digit sacks.
I predicted that this season. I stood
on
it.
That was the other one I did. I made a video about it.
I stood on it. Granted, to be transparent, I also said it the season before that.
Yeah.
So,
and man, everybody was coming for me too because they were like, "Okay, you got so much right, but you got Josh Sweat wrong." No, I didn't.
Oh man, I'm proud of Josh Sweat, man. I'm so proud. It's a shame he got hurt when he did.
But I think he's going to be back though.
I was a little nervous. Neck injuries scare me. They make me nervous.
Well, I still don't know the extent of the injury because the Eagles don't really tell you much.
That part. They sent him home the same night, and he's been around the facility. He told Sirianni, hey, I'm good to go, honestly. But obviously they're going to tread lightly with it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm ready to try to set the sack record, bro.
For sure. All right, final award, staff member of the year. Now you can give this to any staff member, right? Offense, defense, coordinators, GM, the custodian. You can do. Jalen Hurts always shouts out Tommy, the custodian. But you can give it to any staff member. Who's your staff member of the year?
The cop-out answer is to say Howie Roseman, so I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
I think Shane Steichen is an obvious answer. I'm not going to say that one either. I'm going to tell you who I think deserves a ton of credit, and I don't hear his name mentioned a lot. Brian Johnson, quarterback coach. Stoutland's great too.
Expand on that. Because I feel like Stoutland is an obvious answer as well, but Brian Johnson is a very good answer.
I just think that, number one, having continuity. Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson being a former quarterback. Brian Johnson being a former offensive coordinator. We know that Brian Johnson has worked with a ton of quarterbacks, including Dak Prescott, by the way. What I have observed from Jalen Hurts over these past 2 seasons, I've watched a lot of bad quarterback coaching. I was not a fan of Press Taylor. I just wasn't, man.
I wasn't either. It's no mystery there.
And to see, and maybe I'm just being fooled by just adequate coaching after having like someone who I felt was completely unqualified for the position, to be quite honest, be there before. It's a breath of fresh air, man. Like I think that Shane Steichen's going to get a lot of credit for Jalen Hurts. I think Nick Sirianni's going to get a ton of credit for Jalen Hurts. But I think the guy behind the scenes, outside of Jalen Hurts doing Jalen Hurts type things, is Brian Johnson. I think that there's something to finding out what your quarterback is comfortable with, helping him work through things, helping him understand the offense, right? It's one thing to go work in the offseason with quarterback gurus and work on your footwork, work on your processing, doing all those things, right? It's another thing to then receive the install of the playbook and know where to go with the football. That comes from practice and film study. It has a large part to do with the guy leading that room. The guy leading that room is Brian Johnson. I think the dude deserves a ton of credit, man. The way Jalen Hurts has operated this offense and put it into gear, man. He's put us, in rhythm and had this offense on time. I think Brian Johnson's being slept on, man, with how good of a job he's done. I would not be shocked if we don't start hearing some interest around him.
And let's end it there, right? I know I keep saying final question, but this is the final question.
Hey, you're good.
Shane Steichen could potentially be out the door. What are the odds Brian Johnson becomes ROC?
I think Nick said it. I think it's possible, man. I think Nick said he's got some internal candidates and he's got some external candidates to consider. I think Brian Johnson, I don't know who's the favorite there. I mean, he's got, my fears is that Patullo is his right-hand man. And he's been, he's the guy who designs the passing concepts for the install for the offense. With that said, if you want continuity from your play caller, if you want continuity from your offensive coordinator with your quarterback, in my opinion, that's Brian Johnson.
And on that note, you guys, man, Gate, you've been spectacular, my man. You've given me much more than I asked for. I appreciate you as always, man. Whenever you need to call on me, whatever you want to call on me for, whatever it is, man, I will do my best to make it happen. You guys have been locked in on Chalk It Up Sports, and this has been a masterclass from Steve Hyder. This has been a masterclass from Gate City Sports in terms of quarterback play, in terms of just how to dissect the game and coaching and being able to put guys in position. This has been a fun live stream, and it's always cool whenever I can connect with Gate City Sports. Again, man, he does amazing work. Make sure you guys like it on his content as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link to his YouTube channel in the description to make sure you guys lock in and subscribe to his content. One of the more astute, one of the more intuitive guys breaking down the sport, and I'm grateful to have him on Chalk It Up Sports. Any final words before we get out of here, Steve?
Super Bowl bust, bro.
Super Bowl bust. I'm with you on that. Super Bowl bust. Yeah. Straight like that, man. But, again, it's been fun. I appreciate all the people who've been active, man. Let's do some final shout-outs. Shout out to Danny D, Dank Burrito. Who else? Who else we got here, man? Shout out to Drew Johnson, Bad Monkey, OG Flash, Quasi the Great MG. Who else we got in here? Let's show some love, man. Jinx Wolf, Smitty Eagle, Mrs. Bird Gang, Nina Austin. We appreciate all the love and support that you guys give. And even the ones who haven't dropped anything in the live chat, I appreciate you guys for staying consistent, staying true, staying loyal to the soil, and just giving me your eyes and your ears. You guys have been locked in on Chalk It Up Sports with your guy, Tone DeShields II. I was joined by Gate City Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game, y'all. One love, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry. And we'll see you guys next time.